Every morning, the sun falls on the dew of little things. Dew, the authentic essence of a serene sunrise. But does the sun know about the dew that holds its picture together?
A German filmmaker by name Werner Herzog, in one of his films, there is one tribal fellow trying to explain something. There are other tribal people from other groups, and nobody knows what he's trying to say. Only one person understands. It seems he's the last living person of his tribe. And if he dies, all the medical information, all the knowledge of art, all the knowledge of the forest, everything would be lost along with him, so he is not to be sued.
What is art? A form of expression or a responsibility? Is it an influential element that can change the course of history? Or is it outcast by the norms of social acceptance? If it is either, is it necessary to preserve it? And how do you preserve art? By merely documenting it or by practicing it? Historians believe that art, much like literature, comes to life because of a certain canonization. Some believe the reason for an art to die or transform is merely political.
Folk art, usually when it was initially a folk art, was never moved from its premise. Then you shift it over to the gallery system called as white cube, and the moment you are inside the gallery system, you are branded as artwork. Otherwise, if you miss the train, it's no more an artwork, it becomes folk and tribal. So folk and tribal basically cannot define themselves from within. It's the urban mainstream art which defines folk and tribal. That's the first catch. It's like one kind of colonizing folk art actually.
200 kilometers south of Goa, a tribe barely exists. Based in a town called Malkod in Uttar Kannada, on the northern banks of river Sharavati, undetectable by the maps of Google, the Gomukkalu tribe survives. Due to homogenization, it is almost completely impossible to differentiate them from the quintessential rural village in India. They have no authentic clothes and they wear no distinction from normalcy. To an ordinary bystander, they seem like a population who enjoy watching Kannada films starring Darshan and Upendra, who chew tobacco seamlessly, and who live off agriculture and fishing. There are various stories associated with the origin of the tribe. Stories to do with Shiva, to do with Brahmin, and even Gama. Hanmi, one of the last surviving strands of culture left in the battle of globalization, is a treasure chest. She stays with her son Babu Gowda and enjoys watching daytime Kannada serials. She spends her afternoons playing with her grandchildren or taking naps. She is one of the few people in the world who can recite the Gomukkalu version of the Mahabharata. She is that ethos which is possibly the primary source to form the lexicon to the indigenous art form practiced by the tribe called Shedi.
ಹೀಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಜನರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಕಾಮಕ್ಕಲ ಮಹಾಭಾರತವನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದ್ದೆ. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಹಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಗೌರಿ ಅನ್ನುವ ಒಬ್ರು ಹಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಹೀಗೆ ನಾಲ್ಕಾರು ಜನ ಕೂಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆ ಹಾಡನ್ನು ಹಾಡಿದರು. ನಾನು ಹನುಮಿ ಹತ್ರ ಹೋದದ್ದು ಆಕೆ ಏನಾದರೂ ಕಾಮಕ್ಕಲ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವಿಶೇಷ ಮಾಹಿತಿ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ ಸಲುವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದೆ. ಹೋದಾಗ ಆಕೆಗೆ ಮಾಹಿತಿಯ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಗಾಮಕ್ಕಲಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಆಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತು, ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಗೊತ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಈ ಮಹಾಭಾರತವನ್ನು, ಜಾನಪದ ಮಹಾಭಾರತ, ಗಾಮಕ್ಕಲ ಮಹಾಭಾರತ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಮಹಾಭಾರತವನ್ನು ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಹಾಡಬಲ್ಲೋಡು ಈಗ ನನಗೆ ತಿಳಿದ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಹನುಮಿ ಒಬ್ಬಳೇ. ಹಿಂದೆ ನಾನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ನಾಲ್ಕಾರು ಮಂದಿ ಹತ್ರ ಸಂಗ್ರಹ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಅದು ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಆ ಹಾಡುಗಳನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ ನನಗೆ. ಆ ನಂತರ ಆಕೆಗೆ ಮದುವೆ ಹಾಡುಗಳು ಬರ್ತವೆ, ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕತೆ ಹಾಡುಗಳು ಬರ್ತವೆ, ಒಗಟುಗಳು ಬರ್ತವೆ, ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಜನಾಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅಂಶಗಳು ಆಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತು.
Term shady is derived from the clay found in the region. This shady clay is white, which forms the paint which is used in this form of art. They mix this bundle of clay with water to make a paste. The brushes used to paint in shady are made out of the outer husk of the locally grown areca nut plant. They are semi-spherical objects which are cut with 3, 4, 5 or 6 protrusions using the khurpi, an instrument used for farming. This art is drawn on walls and the floor, depending on the context of the painting. When drawn, there is a process to make the canvas. Cow dung, a symbol of purity, is smeared over the canvas using water and is spread using a soft bark found near the apex of the areca nut tree. The canvas is first let to dry and then only is it ready for use. There are 16 primary motifs in this art form, along with many others that have been expressed through the ages. The origin or meaning of these remain unknown. This is the Aid Mole Shedi or the 5-corner Shedi. It is drawn during a marriage where the barber comes to take the hair of the groom for the marriage rituals. It is to be drawn early in the morning and is also drawn in the homes of people to ward off spirits.
ಬಂತು ಈ ಕಡೆ ಬನ್ನಿ, ಈ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಬನ್ನಿ. ಈಗ ನಾ ಬಿಡಿಸಿದ್ದೆ. ಭಾಷೆಂಗ ತಂಡ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅದೇ.
The Hasagara is the main marriage shedi which is drawn on the wall near the mantapa or the sanctum sanctorum where the marriage is conducted. The bride and the groom sit below it.
ಮದುಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕೂದುವಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂದುವಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಮದುವೆ ಕೂದುವಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು.
On the left of the Hasagara is the Pettige Shedi. The Pettige Shedi is drawn to represent the treasure chest that is the bride. Below the Pettige Shedi is kept an actual treasure chest which contains jewelry along with the Bashinga and Tondala. The Shedi representation of the Bashinga and Tondala are fairly recent. They are the headgears that are worn by the groom and the bride respectively. On the floor in front of the Hasagara is the Kalasada Shedi. This represents the place where the Kalasa, an important rice tumbler made of brass in most Indian marriage ceremonies, is kept. On the floor behind the Kalasada Shedi is the Chakrapadi Shedi. It is a welcome gesture for the groom and he is meant to sit on it. The Kode Shedi is a representation of the journey undertaken by the bride and the groom until their matrimony. Here, the brother-in-law of the groom accompanies the couple till the periphery of the ceremonial place, and then they are guided by the father of the groom to the mantapa. There may have been several other motives to do with the marriage ceremonies of the tribe. However, the current trend is to marry at a hall with the typical loudspeakers and the namesake ceremonies. The Shedi art form doesn't come into play only during the matrimonial ceremonies. Just as the Aid Mule Shedi, there is the Ent Mule Shedi or the 8 corner Shedi and the R Mule Shedi or the 6 corner Shedi. These represent 8 or 6 people sitting together and having a conversation free of evil eyes. The Kadaki Shedi is drawn on the day of the naming ceremony of a child. The Shedi is drawn upon which a mattress is kept and the baby is made to sleep on that. On the other hand, the Sarpa Hede Shedi is drawn in place of the deity Nagappa, which they worship on Nag Panchami.
Hanmi's art is some are belong to the rituals, some are like daily rituals they are bringing, some are like a communication, so they bring communication among them, and some art are actually it brings the community together. So if you see their what is that marriage art with they call it Hasagara, so in that each square will be filled with the community women. They all participate in that. There is a lot of participation in that. So this context, the marriage used to happen in the houses and all the women used to involve in the entire process.
ಈ ಕಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಅವರ ಸೌಂದರ್ಯ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕಂಡುಕೊಳ್ಬೋದು. ಸಾಮಾನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗರಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸೌಂದರ್ಯ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಆ ಸೌಂದರ್ಯ ಪ್ರಜ್ಞೆಯನ್ನು ಕಾಣ್ತೇವೆ. ಅದರ ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಈ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಯ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಗಿಡ, ಬಳ್ಳಿ, ಹಕ್ಕಿ ಇಂಥವುಗಳನ್ನು ರಂಗೋಲಿಯ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಅಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಮಾಡಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನ ಸಂತೋಷವನ್ನು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಬದುಕಿನ ಸಾರ್ಥಕತೆಯನ್ನು ಕಂಡುಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ.
The Shedi art form has several other occasions of practice which are dissolving in the sea of modernism under the pretext of liberalization. This art form that used to be a part and parcel of everyday life is now something that needs to be documented due to its rarity. The people of the Gomukkalu tribe themselves find in it fascination, which happens to be an unfortunate thing. Along with the act of painting, the tribals also sing the shady songs. These folk songs are known by Hanmi alone today. One of the shady kale is the Govina Kolacha, which symbolizes the hooves of the sacred cow. They paint the Govina Kolacha after the Tulsi Hunnume Puje. When they leave the cow they worship, free to roam the front porch of the house. The Govina Puje song is sung during the Cow Puja festival.
12 ವರ್ಷಿನ ಸಣ್ಣ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಸೇಡಿಯ ಮರಗಿ ಬಾಲ ಸೇಡಿಯ ಮರಗಿ ಬಲಗೈಲೆ ತಡಕಂಡೆ ಗೋಗಳ ಕೊಟ್ಟಗೆ ನಡ
This song is in the active voice and addresses the listener directly, breaking the fourth wall.
ಗೋವಿನ ಕೊಳಚ ಬರದರೆ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಗೋವಿನ ಪಾದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾರ ಸಿರಿಪದಕ್ಕೆ ಶರಣಂದೆ ನಂಬರೆ ಒರಸಿಗೂ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಾರ್ಯ.
The song then goes on to describe in detail the process of the puja and ends with presenting the cow's perception too. It talks about how plowing is the primary source of satisfaction for the cow. This song is not only important for the light it sheds on the indigenous practices of the tribe that are age-old, but also throws light on the ancient understanding of agriculture itself. Hanmi turns out to be an enthusiastic person who takes her visitors very seriously. She invites them to her sister's home to perform their age-old songs.
ಮನೆ ಊರದ ಮನೆ ನಾವು ಮದುವೆಯಾಗಿ ಬಂದ ಮನೆ.
The Gomukkalu version of the Mahabharata is the innermost treasure chest of this tribe. This version takes up to 12 hours when recited orally and is significantly different from the conventional versions. Here, Karna is the protagonist and Krishna the antagonist of this epic.
ಮತ್ತು ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರು ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮೀ ಗೌಡ ಅಂತ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರಿದ್ರು. ಹೀಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಜನರಿಂದ ನಾನು ಗಾಮಕ್ಕಲ ಮಹಾಭಾರತವನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿದ್ದೆ. ಬಹಳಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಹಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಗೌರಿ ಅನ್ನುವ ಒಬ್ರು ಹಾಡಿದ್ರು. ಹೀಗೆ 4-6 ಜನ ಕೂಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆ ಹಾಡನ್ನು ಹಾಡಿದರು.
This form of the Mahabharata comes in sections of poetry, centering a character and narrates the story of one character at a time instead of the gestalt versions that we are so familiar with.
ಸುಮಾರು ಒಂದು 500 ಪುಟದಷ್ಟು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಹಾಕಾವ್ಯ ಅದರ ಒಂದು ಖಂಡಕಾವ್ಯದ ತುಣುಕನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ದರ್ಬರ ಹಾಡಿನ ಒಂದು ತುಣುಕಿ.
ನೆಳಲಡ್ಡ ನಿಂದಿ ಕಂಡೆ ಆರ್ವರೆಗೆ ದಾನ ಕೊಡೋ ಬಾಳೆ
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಡುಗಾರ್ತಿ ಗಾಮೊಕ್ಕಲ ಮಹಾಭಾರತದ ಹಾಡುಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾಳೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗಾಮೊಕ್ಕಲ ಮಹಾಭಾರತ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಮಹಾಭಾರತದ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಥೆಗಳು ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮಹಾಭಾರತದ ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರಸಂಗಗಳನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಅವನ್ನು ತುಂಡು ತುಂಡಾಗಿ ಅವನ್ನು ಖಂಡಕಾವ್ಯದ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ಹಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಂಥ ಸುಮಾರು 18 ಖಂಡಕಾವ್ಯದ ತುಣುಕುಗಳಿವೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಧರ್ಮರ ಹಾಡು, ದ್ರೌಪದಿ ಹಾಡು, ಕನಕಾಂಗಿ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ, ಅಭಿಮನ್ಯು ಹಾಡು, ಅದರಂತೆ ಸಾವಿತ್ರಿ ಹಾಡು, ಹೀಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹಾಡುಗಳು ಸಿಗ್ತವೆ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ. ಅರ್ಜುನ ಮತ್ತು ನಾರಾಯಣ ದೇವನ ಮದುವೆ, ಹೀಗೆ ಮಹಾಭಾರತಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂಥ 18 ಖಂಡಕಾವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಹಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ ಖಂಡಕಾವ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ತುಣುಕಿದು.
ಗುರುರಾಯ ಅದು ರಾಜ್ಯ ಎಲ್ಲ ಗೆಲ್ಲುಕ್ಕೆ ಪಗಡಿ ಆಡೋಕೆ ಕರೀತಾನೆ. ಕರೆದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪಗಡಿ ಆಡೋಕೆ ಹೋಯ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು. ಹೋಗುವಂಗೆ ದ್ರೌಪದಿ ಹೋಗೋದು ಬೇಡ ಹೇಳ್ತದೆ, ಕೇಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ ಕರೆದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಗಲೇಬೇಕು ಅಂತಾನೆ ಧರ್ಮರಾಯ. ಕಡೆಗೆ ಅವರು ರಥದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಯ್ತಾರೆ. ರಥದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹೋಗುವಂಗೆ ಈಗ ಗುಬ್ಬಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೊಕ್ಕಿನೂ ಹಿಂದೆ ತಿರುಗಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಸೋಲು ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಬಾಗಿಲಿಗೆ ಕಾಯಿ ಹೊಡೀತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಒಂದು ಕೋಚ್ ಬೀಳ್ತದೆ, ಒಂದು ಹದರಕ್ಕೆ ಬೀಳ್ತದೆ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಸೋಲಾದೆ ಹೋಗಬೇಡಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಕೇಳುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಹೋಗಲೇಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗಿ ಸೋಲ್ತಾರೆ. ಕಡೆಗೆ ದ್ರೌಪದಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ ಹಾಡಿನಲ್ಲಿ. ದ್ರೌಪದಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಗೆಲ್ತಾರೆ.
What is it that leads to the extinguishing of a culture, a way of life? Is it the absorption of another's culture? Western education has come into this land like a swarm of bees, stinging away the next bead in the chain of tradition that is the future of any community, their children.
ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಹೇಳಿದ 3 ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳನ್ನು ಮರೆಯದೆ, ಹೌದು, 38 ರೂಪಾಯಿಗಳ ಮುಖಬೆಲೆಯ ಕೇವಲ 20 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ರಿಯಾಯಿತಿ ದರಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಳ್ಳಿರಿ ಮತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಉಜ್ವಲ ಭವಿಷ್ಯ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕನಸನ್ನು ಸಾಕ್ಷಾತ್ಕಾರ.
As a social experiment, we asked Hanmi to go down to the local school and draw a motif for its students to see how many of them actually knew what it meant.
ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಾಕ್ಟ್ರ್ ಯಾರು ಆಗಬೇಕು? ನೀವಿಬ್ರು ಡಾಕ್ಟ್ರ್ ಆಗಬೇಕಾ? ಅವಳು ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ ಅಂದ್ಲು, ಯಾರು ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರು ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನೇನು ಕೆಲಸ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆಯಾ? ಏನೇನು ಕೆಲಸಗಳಿರುತ್ತೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ರಿ ನೀವು ಅಂತ?
We proceeded to ask a student to replicate the motif.
ಈಗ ಈ ಚಿತ್ರ ಬಿಡಿಸ್ದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದಕ್ಕೇನಾದ್ರು ಇದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ನಿನಗೆ? ಅಜ್ಜಿ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರಾ? ಮರ್ತೋದೆ.
Can this be an example of the death of an art form as a whole? The Western propaganda has seeped into the very nooks and crannies of our civilization, wherein economically driven professions are prioritized over the ways of life itself.
ಕಲಿಬೇಕು, ಕಲಿಕೆ ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಈಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ
ರಂಗೋಲಿ ಬರ್ತದೆ,
ರಂಗೋಲಿ ಬರ್ತದೆ, ಈಗೆಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಟೈಪ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತದೆ.
ಅದ್ರ ಮಾಡಿ
ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಬಾಕಿ
ನೋಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮಾಡಿ ಕಲಿಬೇಕು ಹೇಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ.
ಇದು ತಾಯಿಯಿಂದ ಮಗಳು ಕಲಿತು, ಈಗ ಮಗಳಿಂದ ಮತ್ತೊಬ್ಬಳು ಕಲಿಬೇಕು,
ಬಿಟ್ಟೋಗದೆ.
ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದ್ರೆ
ನಂದು ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಒಂದೇ ಸಲ ಮದುವೆ ಆಗಿತ್ತು. ಮದುವೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಟ್ಟೋಗೋದು.
Western education has proven to be ill-affecting in the perception of more than one documentarian.
40 years back, when my parents started documenting entire folklore of this region, they are nowhere, so they don't know where they have come from. And everybody was looking same to me, like the sameness was really boring for me in the urban schools. Everybody is wearing Nike shoes, eating the same kind of food, no diversity, anything. But and the connection, they lost the connection where they have come from. That made me to start something else. I should not teach in schools in four walls. It is very artificial.
This case of Hanmi is one that has been discovered. Who knows how many art forms have died over the ages or transformed into something unrecognizable.
During and before colonization, the king used to be the sponsor, and it was 100% sponsor. The artist had not, there was nothing for the artist to do other than make art. But the folk art forms, even then, was something which laid outside the palace. It was the common man's art form. And they would do it only when their yearly routine was defined and redefined by the climatic condition. When it was a rainy season, when they couldn't go to the fields, then they could stop to make leather puppets. They could make art forms. So the kind of folk art form you are speaking about was never a full-time preoccupation in the way the modern painter would perhaps spend all his time in the studios. Generalization definitely has affected everything. The idea of global uniformity has ironed out many differences in between. But folk art form, I think it needs to be addressed in a different situation where it comes more from being, there were folk art forms even during the Egyptian period. And all the art forms we are teaching and studying in art schools today are basically those which were very close to the aristocratic system. The common man's art are always left out. Only from 1960s onwards it was taken back in the name of pop art and in the name of graffiti. So otherwise, common man's thing was never an organized effort. And they were there in close societies. So that's why when earlier there was such small close societies, you have so many varieties of art forms in India. That scholar and painter like K.G. Subramanian, Professor K.G. Subramanian of Shantiniketan, he writes in his book called as Living Tradition, he says for every one mainstream urban artist, there are about 10,000 folk and tribal artists. You can imagine the scale. So that's why the government set up these forums to re-evoke them. But the onslaught of the global economy actually should be encouraging it. Because when the tourism happens, the tourism industry, they would like to pick up an art form which doesn't exist in their country. And they want to pick up an art form which is unique to this place. And our modern art and contemporary art, which looks very much like a European art, they are not interested in that. They would be interested if they go to Mysore, the tourists would come over. They don't pick up the modern art pieces there, they pick up the traditional paintings, they pick up those old coins, they pick up those folk art carvings. So in that sense, the lack of institutional organization is the only reason perhaps for it, and also pedagogic, in the sense the educational. If we include analyzing them, criticizing them, appreciating them as a part of our artworks, if we include the study of folk art as importantly as we include study of modern and contemporary art, then it's possible.
ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ರಂಗೋಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅವರ ಅದ್ಭುತವಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಕಲೆಗಾರಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಅದ್ಭುತವಾದಂಥ ಕಲೆಯನ್ನು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹಿಸುವ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ಉಳಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ಳಬೇಕಾದ್ದು ನಾಗರಿಕರಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ
A change in syllabus, which is very easy in art schools, because by and large the art school under UGC are informally autonomous, because the UGC doesn't clearly understand the nuances of an art school. And the teachers could have a workshop where they told about the importance of the losing out language, culture, etc. and make those study of the folk art forms and the practice as a compulsory subject, because we have many subjects in the name of art. Bringing in one more subject, it doesn't hurt the practice in any which way. So we can create museums, awareness projects with NGOs, with sponsoring agencies like IFU, but bring an awareness to them also, because whenever they give a fund for collaborative project between mainstream artists and the folk artists, there have been many projects like this. They usually give the responsibility to the mainstream artists to take care of the folk artists. Immediately it tells that folk artists are less important than us because of their lack of articulating power. Articulation alone doesn't make art. How about reversing the process for a while as an experiment? You don't lose anything there. Let the folk artists tell the mainstream artists to do what they think is right. They're full of worldly knowledge because the context in which they live and the way they think are closer than the way an urban artist thinks in the situation he lives in. So, as a pedagogic exercise, synopsis, cultural policies, this is possible. But the NGOs trying to do it, the Dastakars trying to do it, without collaborating with other institutions, without taking a stock situation of everybody together, the lack of uniform gathering of all the cultural spaces to decide what to do with that is the only reason why we are ignoring it.
The sun rises every morning to the sea of globalization. The little dewdrops of culture homogenize by the evaporation and become rain and then again fall into the great sea.